we've seen test results on people in their 80s who are testing like 20-year-olds. That will allow you to jump into some of these races, and you can break all the world records because there's not a lot of competition. This is an enzyme that regulates cellular metabolism. It leads to increased mitochondrial biogenesis, so you have better expression of the mitochondria, and that's really where your VO2 max is coming from, is the mitochondria, like the engine of the cell, and they're going to be going through all the respiration cycles and really giving you the energy you need. Some of the things that SS31 does is it inhibits cardiolipin peroxidation, and it restores the structure of your mitochondria. It reduces ROS, so you're going to have a better VO2 max. You'll be able to have better oxygen utilization and energy expenditure under intense exercise conditions. Hey everybody, welcome to the Health Accelerator Challenge, and I'm your host, Reagan Archibald. Really good to have you guys here. And today we're going to be jumping into more of the benefits of VO2 max, how you guys can get your VO2 max tested, and what to do about it. I'm just waiting on a few people coming in. I am flying solo. Kate is actually Spokane, North Carolina. He is on a plane. He did a presentation today to a group of entrepreneurs at the Growth Summit with Chad Jenkins. Thanks, Chad, for the invite. Went really well. Okay, there you guys are. All right, well, we're going to kick it off now. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer those. But right now, our big focus for the next couple of weeks is going to be on VO2 max and what is VO2 max, why it's important. And then we talked about that a couple of the shows ago. And so I'd encourage you to go back, but I'll do a brief overview today. And then what we're going to do is jump into some of the main peptides. And last week, we covered one of my favorite peptides, which is called MOTS-c. And we went through the research on MOTS-c, some of the benefits of it, some of the things we don't know about it yet, but we do know that that's a peptide that can potentially have dramatic improvements on your VO2 max. And one of the studies that I shared is where they took old mice and young mice and they put them on a treadmill to see how far they could run. And they found that the young mice could run about twice as far as the old mice. And then they did 7 days of MOTS-c injections, and the old mice could run just as far as the young mice. So that's we had that there, and that was kind of an important piece of it. The other thing that we talked about with VO2 max is the new announcement is that we do have VO2 max training in the office. And so what we want to do is get you tested. And that was your challenge. It's going to be your challenge today is get tested, get your VO2 max. Just reach out to the office. We've got one of the most sophisticated devices called a PNOE. That's P-N-O-E. And what PNOE does is it looks at your active metabolic output. So it's the maximum amount of oxygen your body can utilize during intense exercise. And then we also show your passive levels. So we look at energy expenditure when you're passive. So we can tell you exactly the amount of calories you need in order to succeed. And so if you haven't set up your appointment for that, get it set up. Make sure you come in workout clothes because we can put you on a treadmill or a bike, a stationary bike. And then we can see how well your body gets going on energy. And so it's really important because the VO2 max, it relates to your lungs, your fat utilization, your cardiovascular function, and your metabolic rate. But what the research shows is that people with higher VO2 max levels, and we did cover this a couple sessions ago, so I'm just doing an overview. And then we're going to dive into additional peptides today, 5-amino-1-MQ being the major one. But what the research shows is you'll have enhanced endurance. You can improve your recovery capabilities with a higher VO2 max. You can bounce back quicker. You can maintain more consistent training schedules. You'll have an increased metabolic health. So studies have shown that if you have a higher VO2 max, you're going to have better insulin sensitivity, lower blood pressure, improved lipid profiles, and those factors all contribute to a reduced risk of metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So one of the reasons why this, I believe, is one of the most important longevity metrics is, after reading Peter Attia's book, Outlive, and if you haven't read his book, I'd recommend it. Peter Attia just does a great job of breaking down all the nuances. But that book actually explains why VO2 max is so important. Cognitive benefits, so exercise improves your VO2 max, has been linked to improvements in memory, attention, executive function. So if you think of how good your brain feels after you've exercised, that's great. It's one of the best ways that you can trigger this molecule called BDNF, and that's what makes our brains more plastic. And so just by exercising more and increasing your VO2 max, what you're going to find is you're going to grow new brain cells, you're going to strengthen neural connections, and then you can slow down cognitive decline and age-related issues. I spoke to one of our clients today who's 87, and he's an 87-year-old, and he's getting stronger. He's feeling better. He just looks great. And I was talking to him. I'm like, you know what, Bernal, you should jump into do some of the senior games. So in St. George, they have senior games where you can compete in any kind of competition, because if you can maintain a really high VO2 max, even in your 80s, we've seen test results on people in their 80s who are testing like 20-year-olds. But that will allow you to jump into some of these races, and you can break all the world records because there's not a lot of competition. Most people at 87 have exited the planet, or they're waiting to exit, and not him. He's going really strong. The other thing you'll notice, the higher VO2 max, what usually correlates is better bone density. So if you are concerned about osteopenia, osteoporosis, get your VO2 max tested, and then let's see if we can't slowly nudge that thing up, because running, jumping, high intensity interval training, those can all improve your VO2 max. And then finally, you're going to have an improved immune function with regular exercise and higher VO2 max. The major thing that I referenced is the study that I think is probably the best, is where they followed 122,000 patients with an average age of 53. And the ones who had the highest level, the VO2 max, their mortality rate was the lowest. So I think that's where we wanted to talk about some of the peptides that can really be beneficial when it comes to VO2 max. So the peptide we covered last week was MOTS-c. This one on your VO2 max upgrades. I'm going to share my screen here because I know some of you love that. And actually, we've got a question that came in. So let me, Anthony, good to have you on. Have you seen any benefits of using Activegen or Benetil to improve VO2 max? I have not, but I have seen it with some of the peptides we're covering today. For those of you who have ever looked at, let me share the screen with you. For those of you who have ever gotten the 5-amino-1-MQ from us, I know many of you have. This is the one that's a capsule, and it's technically a small molecule, but it was discovered out of the University of San Antonio, Texas. I believe it was 2017. And what the researchers were looking at is they were looking at this pathway called NNMT. And this is the pathway that causes our body to store fat. And so when that pathway is expressed, this is where you can look at food and literally put on weight. And I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but I have a lot of our patients who will say, man, if I look at a piece of bread, I gain 10 pounds, but that's because that NNMT pathway is expressed. And so what the researchers were doing at the University of San Antonio, Texas, is they're saying, well, what could we do? What is there that could actually inhibit this pathway? And by inhibiting that pathway, they found this molecule called 5-amino-1-MQ or methylquinine. And what they found is that when you inhibit that pathway, then your body goes into, instead of going into lipogenesis, where your body is producing more fat cells and storing more energy as fat, your body actually utilizing that fat as energy. So it's called lipolysis. And so 5-amino-1-MQ, it actually helps your body burn fat. And you're like, well, how does that relate to the VO2 max that you're talking about? Well, they found out that the reason why it does that is because 5-amino-1-MQ activates this pathway called AMP, activated protein kinase, or AMPK. And this is an enzyme that regulates cellular metabolism. It leads to increased mitochondrial biogenesis, so you have better expression of the mitochondria, and that's really where your VO2 max is coming from. Is the mitochondria like the engine of the cell, and they're going to be going through all the respiration cycles and really giving you the energy you need. Because the VO2 max test, when you're doing the active test, it takes 10 minutes. You get a little warm-up session, and then you're going to be done in a short period of time. But when you have this activation of the AMPK, you're going to see improved glucose and fatty acid metabolism and better oxygen utilization in skeletal muscles during exercise. And then that will allow you to exercise at higher intensities. And then you'll be able to utilize greater levels of oxygen that way. So 5-amino-1-MQ, and if you've not tried this peptide, I just had a client today and we looked at her blood labs and she was looking at her cholesterol levels because she's got what we think might be familiar hyperlipidemia or high cholesterol related to genetics. And so, but once she got on the 5-amino-1-MQ, her cholesterol levels came right down. And there is a study that shows with 90-day use of 5-amino-1-MQ with people who do have high lipid profiles or high LDL cholesterol, high triglycerides. They found that after 90 days, those markers came down by about 20%. So, and you can see if you're utilizing fatty acid metabolism, then you won't have so much free circulation of it in your blood. So 5-amino-1-MQ, the other thing it does is it helps with contractility of the gastrocnemius. And that contractility, what it does is it helps you jump higher, you can run faster. It's one of the peptides I used last year when I was working on my vert. And so I think, I've shared this with you guys before, but last year my big goal was no pain. So I had a number one policy is I'm not going to allow pain. And so no free rent for pain. So I got a full body makeover and that was amazing. And then I also wanted to be able to touch the rim. And so I did athletic greatness. I did this protocol with knees over toes with Ben Patrick, and it made a huge difference. And my results is I did increase my vert by 5 inches, and I can now dunk a basketball if the rim is lowered to 8 feet. So I know I wish I could dunk on a 10-foot, but my goal was to touch the rim just barely because I could do that in high school, but I'm still got about 2 inches to go. But I'm happy I increased my vertical. But 5-amino-1-MQ just helped create a lot more proprioception, and I'm on that peptide again now, getting in preparation for mountain biking season. And I just got a bunch of peptides that came in, so I'm super stoked about it. So here's what 5-amino-1-MQ can do. This is where we talked about inhibiting that NNMT pathway or the nicotinamide and methyltransferase. That's where they found that 5-amino-1-MQ, it also increased levels of NAD. And if you guys remember NAD, or if you've ever used it, NAD is your body's natural energy source. So that's like fuel for your DNA, fuel for your genes. And when you have great levels of NAD, then you're going to activate what's called SIRT1 or sirtuin. So NAD is a sirtuin activator, and that turns on your longevity genes. So if you want to live a long time and you want to have incredible, unreasonable health throughout your life, then you want to have sirtuin activation, because sirtuins, what they do is they go into the DNA and they clean it up. And then they allow you to use the mitochondrial function better and better metabolic efficiency. And so what that means is you're going to have better oxygen utilization during exercise by increasing your NAD. So yes, you can use 5-amino-1-MQ. You could also use NAD, but that's some of the research on 5-amino. The other thing that researchers found, once again out of University of Texas, this was San Antonio, is by blocking that or inhibiting the NNMT pathway, you're going to allow your brown fat, which is the more metabolically inactive fat, to turn into beige fat or white fat, where it's more metabolically metabolized. So brown fat or brown fat, excuse me, brown fat's the more active fat. The white fat is where the mitochondria concentrate on the center, and it's really hard to burn that fat. So by using 5-amino-1-MQ, you can actually start activating the mitochondria in the fat cell, and then that fat can be utilized as an energy source. One of the things you can do is to activate your NNMT pathway is you can do cold showers. And cold showers, we talked about this before, but just by activating some of that brown fat activation, you also get greater levels of NAD, and then you can activate your mitochondrial pathways that can help supercharge your life. So I'm going to pause for a minute here because we've talked a lot about some of these different pathways. But how many of you, how many of you have actually tried 5-amino-1-MQ before? And I want to hear what you've experienced on it. I first learned about this peptide, or technically this molecule. All right, we got a couple me's coming in. Awesome. And notice an improvement in your athleticism, or you just felt a little lighter on your feet. Maybe you noticed that, okay, yes, definitely. Maybe you noticed a little more capabilities in your ability to run, utilize oxygen. I notice at higher elevations, I do much better. Anthony, you've got, is there a maximum amount of time? You got some great questions. Is there a maximum amount of time you can take 5-amino-1-MQ? Yeah, so 90 days, and then you want to take at least a month off. 90 days is kind of the maximum. We don't like cycling it more than 60 days. And so in your protocol, you'll see that. Would you cycle with 1M and A? Not necessarily. Would there be synergy with low dose leucine? So yeah, leucinergy would be really great for AMPK. You can also cycle it with, we'll get into this in just a minute, but SS31. You can cycle it with methylene blue, because methylene blue is an electron transport donor. So yeah, these are all great. Would there be synergy with beta alanine or butyrol, or because of the brand? Possibly. I don't know the answer to that, Anthony. We'd have to look at your labs and see what would be necessary. I think that would be overkill. But yeah, appreciate the questions. Awesome. And then yes, Anthony, I love the compound. Use it with yeah, perfect. BAM15. Yeah, awesome, Amanda. So you haven't run outside in quite a bit, back out, and it feels great. I think it's a combo of all. Yeah, it's great because we talk about these individual peptides, and that's probably the frustration of medicine, generally speaking, is we want to know that singular agent that makes the big needle movers. And there are times where I've taken peptides. I'm like, this one definitely was game changer. And I first did IGF-1, LR3. I learned how to wake surf. This was like 10 years ago, and I was like shocked at how great I felt and slept. Knew a big difference there. And then I'll stack peptides. 5-amino-1-MQ is one of those where I just noticed these little edge. And I think where I noticed the biggest difference is when I'm using some like 5-amino-1-MQ, tesamorelin, ipamorelin, Selenk, Cmax, that's just, that little stack right now just has me feeling really good. So, but with peptides, I think the big mistake a lot of us make is we get on certain peptides and we just stay on them chronically. And you just need to use them temporarily. Just turn on those genes, and then your body just kicks in. And once those genes are turned on, that's where the momentum kicks in. And I think a lot of the challenges that we have in the scientific world is trying to figure out like, well, what is the singular agent that had the biggest outcome? Because right now, when we look at our clinical data, and we look at the amount of progress that our patients are making, it is like we've never seen progress like we're making right now, especially now that we've added in the cord plasma. With the cord plasma, we're able to flush out all those pro-inflammatory cytokines and get people's blood cleaned out and activate stem cells, because anytime you have really clean, young, fresh plasma from umbilical cords, you're going to activate all the stem cells in your body. So it's one of the smartest things you can do if you're really looking to optimize your peptides capabilities of binding to cells and activating those genes, because that's how the peptides are communicating is they get circulated through the blood, and then they go and turn on all the genes, and you get that nice expression. But the big challenge is it's never just one thing. It's not just 5-amino-1-MQ that's going to increase your VO2 max. It's not going to be MOTS-c. If you stack them together, you're going to get a bigger benefit, but you also need to do the exercise. And so to have a real controlled trial, we have what's called the double blind is in the randomized control trials. I think that's an important piece of science, but I think personalized medicine is so much more challenging because we have to read your blood labs and then understand all of the needs that your body has personally, instead of just like, oh, we're trying to increase your VO2 max, let's get you on 5-amino-1-MQ. It doesn't work that way. We need to look at all the different metrics. So looking at your cortisol levels, looking at all your blood labs, looking at the inflammatory markers, those are all going to be really important. But we do know that 5-amino-1-MQ, based on what I've shared today, can have amazing impacts on it. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to finish up and touch briefly on this peptide called SS31, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything on 5-amino-1-MQ because it is a favorite peptide. And so some of the things that 5-amino-1-MQ in some of the studies that I looked at, there are some anti-cancer properties because it disrupts the energy supply to cancer cells. There's more research that needs to be done on that, but there is some potential there. There's research that shows it increases energy levels, mental clarity, focus. And once again, this is an oral peptide. So, some of our clients who are a little more gun shy to injections, this has been a phenomenal kind of peptide for at least a couple months in your protocols. It exhibits antimicrobial wound healing properties. It's got anti-aging properties. So it does help slow senescent cells. So you will get cleaner replication, and that makes sense based on the SIRT1 activation. It rejuvenates aged muscle satellite cells. So that's one of the reasons why you get that better contractility. It does have anti-inflammatory effects by reducing tumor necrosis factor alpha, C-reactive protein, homocysteine, lowers cholesterol. I talked about that, improves insulin sensitivity, promotes athletic performance, muscle growth, repair. It helps with lipolysis or the breakdown of fat. So other than that, it's just not really, there's not much to this. So yeah, what a cool molecule. So 5-amino-1-MQ. So the next one that we're going to talk about for VO2 max improvements is SS31. And SS31 is a newer peptide. I'll share my screen here so you can see. But this one, some of the research is phenomenal because you can see what SS31, it's a mitochondrial targeting peptide, and it repairs the oxidative damage that occurs inside of the mitochondria. So I know many of you have done the metabolomics test where we have you collect your urine samples, and that is phenomenal. But the thing that happens is we can see any kind of mitochondrial dysfunction in your body. And so SS31 is the peptide that we use when we see different things like that, or if we see your CO2 is low or your anion gap is high, we may use SS31. Or if there's any issues with your homocysteine markers, or if you've got concerns with like Alzheimer's, because SS31 right now is in clinical trials where they're looking at the benefits of Alzheimer's, and it looks really promising because there's really just nothing out there that really is beneficial in the long run for Alzheimer's. And so some of the things that SS31 does is it inhibits cardiolipin peroxidation, and it restores the structure of your mitochondria. It reduces ROS, so SS31 helps decrease your reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress. So just by reducing your ROS, you're going to have a better VO2 max. You'll be able to have better oxygen utilization and energy expenditure under intense exercise conditions. Um, some of the other things that it does is it helps improve muscle function and energy levels. So SS31, it enhances ATP production and it increases energy levels. And one of the things that we found is with the cell danger response, that's when your mitochondria, when your body is undergoing chronic stress, the first thing that happens is the mitochondria signal the bacteria in your gut, and that predates the immune response. And then you go into the cell danger response if the immune system doesn't take over and create harmony within the blood. And anytime you're stuck in a cell danger response, your ATP is going to be produced outside of the cell. And so what SS31 does is it gets you producing energy right inside of the cell where you need it. SS31 also helps recover muscle strength after an ischemic injury. So if you have heart disease, heart attack, or where you've got ischemic tissues where you've got a loss of oxygenation to the tissue and it dies, so SS31 can help that tissue repair. It supports muscle growth, repair, regeneration. And this is where we're talking about the Alzheimer's study, but it also exhibits neuroprotective properties that help preserve brain health and cognitive function. And for those of you who've done SS31, I don't know if you've had this experience, but it can burn just a little bit. And so yeah, just it's a little lower on the pH level. So um, it's normal. So a lot of people, is that normal? But yes, it burns when I do it, and about 80% of us will have a little burning with it. But it also helps with regeneration of any kind of damage or ischemic tissue in the brain, and it does help with neurodegenerative diseases. So that would be like Parkinson's or MS. ALS, these are all things that's being studied for. Some of the functions that it has for the heart, it does seem to protect the heart by protecting the cardiac mitochondria. And in the cardiac cells, you've got tens of thousands of mitochondria. So it's really important for the heart. It does improve the renal microvascular remodeling and endothelial function in metabolic syndrome. And then in one of the studies, they induced chronic kidney injury in mice. And what they found is by using SS31, these mice that were in kidney failure, they were able to reverse the kidney failure. And so that does need to be studied in humans, but we do see some definite positive benefits in humans too when it comes to kidney function. So here's here's some of the things that, if you want to see a little visual on this, for those of you who are watching this, SS31 is interesting. And this is a study that where they looked at the SS31 reverses age-related redox stress and improves exercise tolerance in aged mice. So this is another one where, when we're talking about VO2 max, if you can reduce that redox stress and improve exercise tolerance, they found that it restored the homeostasis, it improved mitochondrial quality, and increased exercise tolerance without an increase in mitochondrial content. So they did find that just by repairing the damage to the mitochondria, these mice were able to perform at greater levels and have greater levels of endurance, which we don't know exactly what it did to their VO2 max, but generally speaking, if you have greater levels of endurance, you do a VO2 max test, you'll have greater levels of VO2 max. They also found the gastrocnemius, or that's like the calf muscle in the mice, was more fatigue resistant, significantly greater compared to age control. So they had significantly greater mass. So the gastrocnemius muscle in the calves, that actually improved by using SS31 in these mice. And I know you guys aren't mice, and I know it doesn't always translate, but it's very interesting to see all of these great things that are going on with some of these peptides. So generally speaking, peptides that are going to increase your VO2 max will also increase your longevity. So if you want to live long and if you want to live healthy, so if you want to have a long health span and lifespan, then VO2 max is your way to go. So get a baseline test, but then now there's all these great things you can do to potentially improve your VO2 max with SS31, 5-amino-1-MQ, which we talked about today, and then also with MOD-SC. So a couple questions before we finish up here. Anthony, as an N of 1, you had kidney damage as a result of acute anemia, and you used a very high dose of SS31 for 6 months and gained 15 points back on your GFR. What was your GFR before that? Like, where did you start after the kidney damage, and where did it end up? Because 15 points is significant. That's impressive. Thank you for sharing that. And then you also asked, are there any considerations with combining SS31 as syringe with MOTS-C because of the lower pH of SS31? MOTS-C also has a lower pH, so they're both going to burn. But yeah, you could do that. You could certainly combine them in the same syringe, and that's what I do. It makes it much easier. Instead of 2 injection sites, you've got one. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. We have a couple of clients of ours who, their GFR was below 30 when we started working with them, and getting them on SS31, MOD-SC. We also use ABP7 for the kidneys, and we saw dramatic turnarounds. So, okay, so your GFR started at 43 and increased to 61 at 6 months. Great. Okay. So you're right on track. That's beautiful. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate everyone being on this tonight. And I'm going to give you a challenge for the week. And the big challenge is to get your VO2 max tested. That's one thing. But the other thing is find out an exercise that you really enjoy doing. So if you love pickleball, get out and play some pickleball and move your body around. If you like tennis, one of our patients just loves tennis. She plays doubles and is all competitive. Play tennis. If golf is it, but then use the sport that you love. Think of VO2 max as the gateway for being able to participate in these sports for as long as you live, because I want to be skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking when I'm 80, 90, 100, doing the things that I love doing. And I know I won't be able to do those as well or have as fun doing those if I don't keep my VO2 max really lined out. So that's your challenge. Find the activities you love, and then think of how you can use VO2 max to continually do the thing you love. And I guarantee you're going to live a happier life. So awesome. And Anthony, thank you. He said, thank you for sharing your knowledge each week. You're generous with your time, and I'm grateful. I've learned a lot. Will you guys be at PWC? I'm not sure what PWC is. So that's a no, but maybe I should be there. So Anthony, plug in what it is, and I'd love to look at it. And I appreciate that acknowledgement. So anyway, you guys are amazing. We'll be on next week. And PWC, Peptide World Congress. Oh, I'm going to look that up. That's going to be awesome. Okay. Thank you, Anthony, for the tip. Well, I will see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to continue on. What we're going to do is talk on a whole nother pathway. We're going to jump into the growth hormone releasing peptides. We're going to kick it off with sarcotropin. So for those of you who've used that beautiful liquid peptide called sarcotropin, we're going to talk about sarcopenia and how that impacts VO2 max and circulation. And so you won't want to miss it. Invite your friends, family, loved ones. We'd love to have you guys there. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week.